Isabella's hands trembled as she read the letter that would change everything. Her family had disowned her, effective immediately. The elegant mansion before her, belonging to the enigmatic millionaire Alexander Hayes, was meant to be her prison, not her salvation. She had exactly 30 days to prove her worth as the estate's new live-in assistant or face complete abandonment with no money, no connections, and nowhere to call home. The cruel ultimatum from her family felt like a knife to her heart, but the real mystery was why Alexander had agreed to this arrangement in the first place. "My family sent me here as a punishment," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she stood in his vast marble foyer, suitcase clutched tightly against her chest like a shield. The millionaire studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable behind steel-gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Then stay with me," Alexander replied, his deep voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Not as their punishment, but as my guest." Isabella couldn't understand why a man who had everything would invite a stranger into his home. Alexander Hayes was notoriously private, a self-made tech genius who had retreated from public life after some unnamed tragedy years ago. The staff whispered about him, about the East Wing that remained perpetually locked, about the nightmares that sometimes echoed through the halls. Each day brought new questions. Why did he spend hours staring at an old photograph on his desk? Why did he refuse to attend any social functions? And most puzzling of all, why did his eyes follow her with such intensity whenever she entered a room? 2 weeks into her stay, Isabella was organizing Alexander's library when she discovered a hidden compartment behind the bookshelf. Inside lay a journal with her family name written across the cover in faded ink. Before she could open it, Alexander appeared in the doorway, his face pale with shock. "Where did you find that?" he demanded, crossing the room in 3 quick strides. When their fingers brushed as he took the journal, an electric current seemed to pass between them. He pulled away as if burned, clutching the journal to his chest. "Some secrets should remain buried, Isabella," he warned before disappearing, leaving her with the distinct feeling that her presence in his home was no coincidence at all. The days that followed were filled with tension. Alexander avoided her, working late in his study and taking meals alone. Isabella threw herself into her duties, determined to prove her worth despite her growing suspicion that she was merely a pawn in some larger game between Alexander and her family. Yet in quiet moments, when she played the grand piano in the evenings, when she tended the neglected rose garden, when she left homemade soup outside his study door during a thunderstorm, something shifted between them. Small kindnesses exchanged. Brief conversations that lasted longer each time. Accidental touches that lingered. One night, a violent storm knocked out the power. Isabella found Alexander standing before the massive windows in the darkened living room, lightning illuminating his face in harsh flashes. "I knew your grandmother," he confessed without turning. "She saved my life once, many years ago, when no one else would help me." His voice broke slightly. "I promised to repay that debt, but I was too late. Your family, what they've done to you, it's because of me." Isabella's world tilted on its axis. The journal, her family's cryptic warnings about Alexander, their insistence that working for him would show her the truth, it all began to make a terrible kind of sense. "What happened between you and my family?" she asked, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he could hear it. "Tomorrow," he promised, finally turning to face her. "Tomorrow I'll show you everything." In the darkness, his hand found hers, warm and steady. "But tonight, just stay with me." They sat together through the storm, talking until dawn broke. Alexander spoke of his childhood in poverty, his rise to success, his dreams for the future. Isabella shared her passion for art, her strained relationship with her controlling parents, her desire to forge her own path. Something bloomed between them in those honest hours, something neither had expected to find. The next morning, Alexander led Isabella to the locked East Wing. With each step down the long hallway, Isabella's apprehension grew. When he finally unlocked the ornate double doors, she gasped. The room was filled with paintings, her paintings, once she had sold years ago to pay for art school after her parents refused to support her impractical dreams. Alongside them hung newspaper clippings about an art scholarship foundation Alexander had established in her grandmother's name. "Your grandmother believed in me when I was nothing," Alexander explained, his voice thick with emotion. "She funded my first invention when everyone else laughed. I promised to help her family in return, but by the time I had made my fortune, she was gone. When I tried to establish connections with your family, to fulfill my promise by supporting your art career anonymously, your parents rejected me. They called me a fraud, claimed I had stolen my ideas." He turned to face her, vulnerability evident in his eyes. "They sent you here hoping you would discover my true nature and help them build a case against me. They never expected us to connect." Isabella felt tears streaming down her face as years of family manipulation became clear. Her parents had always controlled her life, her choices, her dreams, and now they had tried to use her as a weapon against the one person who had actually supported her passion from the shadows. "I don't care what they wanted," she whispered fiercely. "I see who you truly are." In the weeks that followed, Isabella and Alexander forged a bond stronger than either had known before. She brought light back into the mansion's dark corners, filling it with music and laughter. He gave her the freedom to pursue her art without constraints, converting a sunroom into a studio where she could paint to her heart's content. Together, they healed wounds neither had acknowledged before. When her 30 days were up, Isabella's parents arrived, expecting to find evidence against Alexander. Instead, they found their daughter standing beside him, hand in hand, stronger than they had ever seen her. "I was sent here as a punishment," Isabella told them, her voice steady and sure. "But instead, I found my freedom. I found someone who believes in me for who I am, not who he wants me to be." Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "And I found someone who saw past my walls, who reminded me that the past doesn't define us. That sometimes, the greatest gifts come disguised as punishments." Isabella's parents left empty-handed that day, but Isabella remained, not as an assistant or a guest, but as a partner. The mansion that was meant to be her prison became the place where she finally found her voice, her purpose, and eventually, her heart's home. In time, they transformed Alexander's foundation to support young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, creating opportunities where none had existed before. The East Wing, once locked away in secrecy, became a gallery open to the community, a testament to the power of believing in someone's potential. What began as a punishment became the greatest blessing of their lives, a reminder that sometimes, the wrong turns lead us exactly where we need to be. Their story became one of redemption, of second chances, and of the kind of love that builds rather than breaks. But their journey was far from over. The day after her parents left, Isabella found Alexander in his study, staring at the journal she had discovered weeks earlier. The leather-bound book lay open on his desk, its pages yellowed with age. "There's more to the story," he said quietly as she entered. "Your grandmother's journal contains the full truth, one I've been afraid to share." Isabella sat beside him, her heart racing. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Alexander took a deep breath. "Your grandmother, Eleanor, wasn't just my benefactor. She was my mentor, my friend, and eventually, my business partner. We were developing revolutionary technology together, clean energy solutions that could have changed the world." His fingers traced the elegant handwriting on the page. "But there was an accident in our lab. An explosion. Eleanor pushed me out of the way, saving my life at the cost of her own." Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "My parents always said she died of heart failure." "They covered it up," Alexander said bitterly. "Your father was already managing her estate. He blamed me for the accident and threatened to destroy my reputation if I ever spoke about our partnership. He buried all evidence of our work together and took credit for some of her innovations himself. That's why they hate you," Isabella whispered, the pieces finally falling into place. "They're afraid you'll reveal the truth." Alexander nodded grimly. I've spent years rebuilding what was lost, honoring Eleanor's vision in my own way. But I never stopped feeling responsible for her death. Isabella reached for his hand. My grandmother made her choice. She believed in you enough to risk everything. Her eyes filled with tears. Just as I do now. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with revelations about her family, her grandmother, and the man who had unexpectedly captured her heart. Around midnight, she slipped out of bed and made her way to the kitchen for tea, only to find Alexander already there, nursing a steaming cup at the island counter. Couldn't sleep either, he asked, offering a gentle smile. She shook her head, taking the seat beside him. I keep thinking about my grandmother. I was only 10 when she died, but I remember how she used to tell me to follow the light in my heart, no matter what anyone said. Isabella's voice softened with memory. She was the only one who ever encouraged my art. She would be incredibly proud of you, Alexander said. You have her spirit, her courage and her vision. Tell me about her, Isabella requested. The real her, not the version my parents painted. Alexander's eyes lit up as he began to speak, sharing stories of Eleanor's brilliance, her infectious laugh, her determination to make the world better. She could walk into a room of skeptical investors and have them eating out of her hand within minutes. Not because she was manipulative, but because her passion was so genuine it was impossible to resist. Like someone else I know, Isabella said softly, her eyes meeting his. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken feelings. Alexander reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering against her cheek. Isabella, I never expected you. When your parents proposed this arrangement, I agreed because I thought it might be my chance to finally understand why they've hated me all these years. I never imagined that we would find each other, she finished for him. He nodded, vulnerability plain on his face. I've been alone for so long. I convinced myself it was better that way. Isabella leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. You're not alone anymore. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. The following morning brought a new challenge. Isabella's phone rang early, her younger sister Charlotte calling in distress. Mom and Dad are furious, she whispered. They're talking about legal action against Alexander. Something about patent infringement and stolen research. They've been meeting with lawyers for days. Isabella felt ice in her veins. When? They're filing papers next week. Isabella, they're saying terrible things about him, and about you. They're telling everyone you've been brainwashed. After hanging up, Isabella found Alexander in his office and relayed Charlotte's warning. His face hardened with resolve rather than fear. I've been expecting this for years, he admitted. But now I have something I didn't have before, the journal. Eleanor documented everything, including her will that named me co-owner of her intellectual property. He took Isabella's hands in his. But fighting this will be ugly. Your family name will be dragged through the courts. Are you prepared for that? Isabella squared her shoulders. The truth matters more than reputation. My grandmother deserves justice, and so do you. What followed was a storm of legal battles, media speculation, and painful revelations. Isabella's parents launched their attack with vicious precision, painting Alexander as a manipulative thief who had now seduced their daughter to further cover his crimes. Old colleagues were paid to question his integrity, documents were selectively edited to support their claims. Through it all, Isabella stood firm beside Alexander, even as her family's smear campaign cost her friendships and professional connections. Her art was suddenly rejected from galleries that had previously courted her, invitations dried up, former mentors stopped returning her calls. The isolation would have broken her once, but now she found strength in purpose, and in Alexander's unwavering support. 3 months into the legal battle, Charlotte appeared at the mansion's door, suitcase in hand and tears streaming down her face. I couldn't do it anymore, she sobbed as Isabella pulled her into a fierce hug. I heard Dad on the phone with his lawyer. They know they're going to lose, so they're planning to destroy grandmother's journal, the original one in the family safe. They said they'd rather burn it than let Alexander win. That night, the three of them formulated a plan. Charlotte would return home, pretending her visit had been an attempt to talk sense into Isabella. Meanwhile, she would locate and secure the original journal before their parents could destroy it. It's dangerous, Alexander warned. If they catch you. Charlotte lifted her chin with determination that mirrored her sister's. Grandmother always told me to stand for what's right, even when it's hard. I'm tired of living in fear of disappointing them. 2 tense days later, Charlotte succeeded. Using the family's annual charity gala as cover, she retrieved the journal from the safe and slipped away unnoticed. By morning, the document was safely in their lawyer's hands, and the case against Alexander began to crumble. The journal contained not only Eleanor's detailed records of her partnership with Alexander but also damning evidence of how her son had systematically erased her legacy after her death, claiming her patents as his own and building the family fortune on stolen innovations. When the truth finally emerged in court, the scandal rocked the art and technology worlds alike. Isabella's parents faced not only legal consequences but social ruin, the very fate they had tried to inflict on Alexander. Yet when the judge asked if he wanted to press additional charges, Alexander declined. Enough families have been torn apart, he said quietly. Eleanor wouldn't want more destruction in her name. In the aftermath, Isabella and Charlotte worked to rebuild their grandmother's legacy properly. They established the Eleanor Grant Foundation for Women in Science and Art, creating scholarships that bridged the two worlds their grandmother had loved. Alexander contributed his technical expertise and business connections, helping to secure patents that had been wrongfully attributed to others. 1 year after Isabella had first arrived at the mansion with her suitcase and her fear, she stood in the transformed East Wing Gallery, now open to the public for the Foundation's inaugural exhibition. Her newest paintings hung alongside historical photographs of Eleanor and her inventions, telling a story of innovation, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. Alexander found her there after the guests had departed, gazing at a portrait she'd painted of her grandmother based on old photographs and Alexander's descriptions. She would have adored you, he said, slipping his arm around Isabella's waist. I wish I could have known her as you did, Isabella replied, leaning into his embrace. In many ways, you do know her, he said. Every time you stand your ground, every time you create something beautiful against all odds, that's Eleanor living on through you. Isabella turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had changed her life in ways she could never have imagined. My family sent me here as a punishment, she whispered, echoing her words from that first day. Alexander smiled, touching his forehead to hers. And I'm grateful every day that they did. That night, under a sky full of stars, Alexander led Isabella to the mansion's rooftop garden, a space he had secretly renovated over the past months. Fairy lights twinkled among the plants, and in the center stood a small table set for dinner. What's all this? Isabella asked, breathless at the beauty surrounding them. Alexander took her hands in his eyes reflecting the starlight. 1 year ago, you came into my life thinking you were being punished. You showed me that sometimes, what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. He lowered himself to one knee, producing a ring box from his pocket. Isabella Grant, will you stay with me, not as a guest, not as a partner, but as my wife? Tears of joy spilled down Isabella's cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, a unique design featuring her grandmother's favorite gemstone, she finally found her voice. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. What had begun as punishment had transformed into the greatest gift either could have imagined, proof that sometimes, life's harshest detours lead us exactly where we're meant to be. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of love's transformative power, please hit like and subscribe for more stories that celebrate second chances and unexpected joy. Your support helps us continue sharing these moments that remind us all that even in our most vulnerable hours, connection and hope can find us when we least expect it.